Hello and welcome. We're in the official launch of Embodied Shakti Leadership Facilitator Training. My name is Annabelle Hart. I am an international best-selling author, medicine woman, and teacher. And I'm here with you today sharing a little about my methodology. So basically how I weave my medicine through the creative endeavors of what I offer for the clientele who choose to work with me and for them to be able to receive their desired results. And if you haven't been tuning in with our launch up until this point, I highly recommend revisiting the recording so that you can hopefully receive some insight, a sense, a feel for who I am and what it is that I'm being called to create through this course, which has been about 10 years in the making. So it's very surreal to be here with you in this moment and finally sharing it with you all. And also what it is that I'm calling women forward to and into this experience with me, first and foremost for themselves, but also the powerful and profound ripple effect of this movement that we're here co-creating. So, yeah, if you don't already know me, one thing that I can share with you, perhaps one of my biggest passions personally through my own life's experiences and professionally through my creative endeavors for the clientele that I work with, is how to transform traumas into treasures. And those of you who know me well, you hear me refer to this often because it's something that's so alive in my heart and in my soul to be able to create this first for myself through my life's experiences, and then to offer this as a gift for all who feel in resonance to connect with this as well. Because what I've witnessed over my lifespan and also my career, through the past 10 years is that essentially whether the trauma is seemingly severe or insignificant, the impact, the result is still very much the same. So it doesn't matter so much about the specifics of the stories that we've experienced. More often than not, the impact or result that eventuates from those experiences is often the same. And this is what I help people to rewire and rewrite in themselves, both personally, but also through their family lineages and through the collective consciousness. So it's a lot about multi-generational and multi-dimensional healing and evolution that we're stepping into with this experience. So basically, and I've spoken to this in a previous video, so you can tune in with this one if you haven't already. I think it's the About Annabelle video, where I'm sharing some of the different themes or patterns that have been playing on repeat for me through life's experiences, and all of which come from a trauma experience. And again, whether that be my own personal experiences or whether it be just a generational imprint that was passed on that I've then been carrying, or even through the collective field as well. And essentially, I can name some of these themes as like, not feeling like I'm good enough, not feeling valuable, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable. All these kind of themes have certainly shown up for me in my life and in various branches of life. It can show up anywhere and everywhere. And likewise, all the people that I've worked with over the past 10 years have all had similar themes showing up from them. And again, it's not necessarily that our stories will be exactly the same. Sometimes they are very similar. But sometimes it's not so much about the story of what occurred. It's more about the impact that resulted and then how we can collectively rewire and rewrite this personally, but collectively. And how I do this is through my 3-step methodology. So liberate, validate, regulate. So liberate is all about bringing this up and out, whatever that may be. That could be the shit, the shadow, the stories. It could also be bringing up and out the lightness, the joy, the love. Whatever has been suppressed and silenced within you, that's being stored in your physical body, that is contributing to emotional disturbance. This can also be like hormonal imbalances as well, specifically for women, as well as like the psychological thought patterns and programs that we continuously cycle on repeat, especially those which are based in a negative tendency, that loop, that seemingly never-ending loop of inner self-criticism. And yeah, and then of course in our energetic field as well, what we need to kind of bring back into wholeness for ourselves. Because in any kind of trauma experience, again, whether it be seemingly severe or seemingly insignificant, what happens often is that the soul disperses itself. And so we can feel this sense of soul loss. And so a huge part of the work that I offer for people is to bring themselves back into this wholeness, that actually none of you is broken. And this is a theme that's been highlighted super strong for me again this week, and I don't mind sharing this with you, is like there within all of us, there are parts of us that feel as though we're broken, we're not enough, we're not valuable, we're not lovable, we're not this, we're not that. And that inner critique can constantly come in to shame and blame us, to blame and to shame us that we're wrong. And it's liberating those stories that are being stored within us. And through that liberation, letting them out. So a huge piece of what I offer people is emotional expression. I really invite people to express the fullness of their emotions. And again, I don't mind sharing this with you. Yesterday, like my inner child was triggered to fuck big time. And it was so beautiful because I've actually been trying to unlock that level of expression of emotion that needed to flow through me for a number of days now. And I just needed that little trigger piece to go beep, and the whole thing exploded in this like ferocious rage and these ferocious screams. And I had a beautiful brother who was holding space for me at the time. And again, this is what I offer for myself and the clients that I work with, is just holding a safe and sacred space for you to be seen and you to be heard. Because how many of us have like grown up feeling as though we're not being seen and we're not being heard? And that's where a lot of those seemingly never-ending loops cycle from, is that we're just not seeing and hearing ourselves. We perhaps never were seen and heard fully as a child either. And so when we hold that safe and sacred space for that liberation to come through, it's so incredibly freeing, because we're expressing the emotions of what's really here for us. And in that particular moment, I needed to unleash that ferocious scream of that rage. And for me, beyond rage or anger is always grief. And so then I was able to unlock this flood of emotion to flow through me and to really feel the grief and let it move through me, simply as energy in motion. Emotion is energy in motion. And when we can allow that to flow freely through us, we don't become so stuck and stagnant. And those stories are not necessarily being stored at a cellular level in our DNA. We can actually liberate ourselves of those stories. And yeah, so a huge piece of what I do is around emotional expression as well as elemental expression. Those of you who might have attended a yoga class with me before, you know that I love breathing in varied ways that relate to the elements within and around me. And that could be like a breath of fire. It could also be breathing, like the sound of the wind or the waves. It's really, I have found so much liberation in working with the elements. So that's a huge piece of the puzzle of what I offer for the clientele who work with me in such varied ways, but specifically through our Embodied Shakti Leadership Facilitator Training. It's a lot about guiding you into reconnection with the elements within you and all around you. It's guiding you into that safe and sacred space within your body where you feel held to let the emotions flow freely through you just as they need to. And no, we don't always want to be having explosive expressions, but that's also part of what I do is teaching people how to work with that emotional liberation in a really safe and sound way for you and for those around you. So liberation, it's a key piece of the puzzle, but so too is validation, because when we liberate, we need to hold that space to validate what's here for us. And so as an example, I'll refer to myself because this is so fresh right now, from yesterday's experiences around, it was important for me to sit and be present in validating my inner child, the parts of me that didn't feel like I was being seen or heard, not necessarily by anyone external to me. It's actually that I wasn't seeing and hearing myself. But of course, the external trigger came from an external source, but it's really about, I don't feel seen and heard in that particular connection, and there's a trigger point there. But where am I also not seeing and hearing myself? And just creating space to validate all parts of us, the parts of us that feel like we're broken, that we're not enough, that we're not valuable, that we're not lovable, that we're not this, that we're not that. Just allowing that to be okay. And so there's various medicines and modalities that I work with to support the clientele that work with me to actually feel that sweet surrender in actually allowing and accepting all parts of ourselves to be okay. And it's through like the validation part to me, it actually feels like I've got this image now of like a mother with like lots of babies, and she's just gathering all parts of herself or himself. But in our circumstance, speaking to women, we're really calling all parts of ourselves home to us. And that's where we can start to regulate. And this is something I'm so passionate about too, because especially if you've had a yoga or meditation class with me before, or perhaps a cacao ceremony. And so much of what I love, both personally and professionally, I've gone down memory lane that just came through. It's the memory of my very first yoga class, which was actually in Switzerland. I was living in England. I was 17. I'd moved there on my own, and I was visiting some family in Switzerland, and we went to this beautiful little petite yoga class and yoga studio that was so simple but so blissful, and it was overlooking these vineyards in Switzerland, like just stunning scenery. And I still remember the scent of the incense that was permeating through that room that particular day. And it was a space of only women, and they were all much older than I was. They all spoke Italian, and me then barely a word of Italian. And so even though I couldn't understand the words that were being spoken, my body, my soul, my heart was so alive in that moment. I was so at home in myself. My body just knew the way. And like, yes, I had who I refer to as my auntie there, supporting a little bit here and there with translation, but even that wasn't necessary because I just had such a sensation of a homecoming. And I love that this memory's come through to share it with you because, like, oh, yeah, it stirs a lot of emotion. I will never forget that experience. You know, that was such a homecoming sensation for me. And this is so alive in me to be able to create these homecoming sensations for other women to come home to yourself, to gather all facets of you, all ages of you, all stages of you, and bring them home. Learn how to really nurture your needs like the Divine Mother, like Mother Earth. And some of us, we may not have perceived that we were mothered as we may have desired to be. Maybe our mother couldn't fully meet our needs as much as we perhaps desired. And it's learning how to be the mother to your inner child. And this is what the regulation piece is for me. It's so much about regulating our nervous system, not according to the trauma that it's already wired to. And this is a key thing that I feel many spiritual-based communities or self-help development-based communities, I actually believe this is a key piece that is missing. There's sometimes not enough emphasis on the liberation and the validation. So when we come to that regulation, people are just continuously wiring themselves according to the trauma of how their nervous system is wired. But that doesn't actually bring us the resounding results that are needed. It's more like kind of a band-aid approach. In many ways, it might help us feel calm for a moment or two, but it's not, I don't see it as the most sustainable way to regulate. So a huge piece of what I value is that liberation and the validation so that we can regulate from rewiring. We've rewired to a state of equilibrium, and now we're going to regulate our nervous systems in accordance with that. Hopefully you can hear and see the difference that I'm trying to highlight there. And if you want to speak more on it, of course, I'm passionate to share that with you. And I guess, yeah, that's the word that keeps coming through for me is that it's a homecoming. This is the exact journey that I've been on, my own voyage of self-discovery around the world and internally through the various medicines and modalities that I've trained with over the years with experts who are like world-class experts who are just so phenomenal in their field of work, and the different experiences that I've had. It's this sensation of a homecoming, coming home to yourself and allowing all of you to be seen, to be heard, to be witnessed, to be loved and accepted unconditionally. And that's something I'm really passionate about, creating those kinds of spaces for my clientele, whether that be back in the day when it was, one-to-one, whether it be through yoga classes, whether it be through cacao ceremonies in person or online. And what I'm calling women into through Embodied Shakti Leadership Facilitator Training is a homecoming. First and foremost for you, that you may feel safe and sound in this sacred space that we're co-creating together, that you can actually unlock and unleash the liberation that you are needing physically, emotionally, psychologically, and energetically. And in holding that space for ourselves and each other, we're then able to validate what's here. Maybe validate why it's here. Validate simply that it's okay that it's here. And come into state of regulate. And with this, again, because we're creating a course here specifically for women, there's a huge such a significant opportunity for us to rewire and rewrite the sisterhood and the motherhood wounding that each of us are carrying, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. And that's something I'm so excited to explore with each of you. And yeah, sorry, I'm not sorry. I'm very grateful that this emotion is here for me. I'm just constantly being reminded of all these homecoming experiences that I've had around the world through various experiences, different medicines and modalities, different teachers. And I'm just feeling very, very emotional about finally being able to gift this experience to many women who are needing this now. And I'm going to leave it there with so much love and gratitude for each of you. Thank you for tuning in. And I would love to hear your reflections, any revelations that have come through for you. And of course, you're welcome to book in a call with me to learn more and apply for Embodied Shakti Leadership Facilitator Training. Bountiful blessings to each of you.